The court had gathered to witness a decision that was never meant to be mine. I understood that the moment I stepped onto the marble dais and felt the air change around me, how the space bent subtly, reshaping itself to remind me I was an intrusion. Not a guest, not an equal. Something temporary, tolerated only until judgment was passed. I stood exactly where I had been instructed to stand, not beside the nobles, not among the courtiers, just close enough to be seen. My hands were folded in front of me, fingers locked together so tightly they trembled. I kept my spine straight, my chin lifted, my breathing slow and deliberate. Weakness was a language this palace spoke fluently, and I had learned, painfully, not to answer in it. Above us, chandeliers burned with cold witchlight, pale blue flames that cast no warmth, only clarity. They illuminated everything, the polished marble veined with black, the carved pillars etched with victories centuries old, the immortal faces watching me with detached curiosity. This hall was not built for mercy. It was built for judgment. My name is Elira. I am mortal. I am unimportant. And tonight, I am being rejected. Prince Caelum of House Noctha stood several steps above me, framed by banners dyed so dark they swallowed the light. He was beautiful in the way something sharp is beautiful, precise, dangerous, untouchable. His silver-black hair was pulled back, his expression bored, already disengaged. He didn't look at me when he spoke. That hurt more than anything else. "She misunderstands her place," he said lightly, as if commenting on the weather. A common mistake among humans invited too close to power. Laughter followed. Not loud, not crude. Measured, elegant, cruel. It rippled through the court like a practiced reflex. I felt it strike my back like stones. I had been summoned here because he had shown interest, because he had asked my name during a banquet months ago, because he had danced with me once beneath the moonlit colonnade, his hand resting at my waist just long enough to make whispers bloom. Potential, curiosity, novelty, poisonous flowers, all of them. "She believed she was chosen," Caelum continued, finally lowering his gaze to me. His eyes were pale, amused. "But I prefer my companions." He paused just long enough. "Unblemished by time." The silence afterward was deliberate, a blade held at my throat. A lady near the throne murmured behind her fan, "Unclaimed." Another voice laughed softly. Mortal arrogance. Heat rushed to my face. My throat tightened until breathing felt like work. I tasted iron and realized I had bitten the inside of my cheek. I did not cry. I would not. Crying would turn this into entertainment, into validation, into proof that I was exactly what they believed me to be. Instead, I bowed. Perfectly. The kind of bow drilled into me by servants who understood survival better than dignity. Then I turned to leave. The first step felt unreal, like my body was lagging behind my will. I focused on the marble beneath my feet, dark veins cutting through white stone like frozen lightning, to keep myself upright. I was almost past the dais, almost free of their eyes. That was when the air changed. There was no sound, no magic flaring, no raised voices, just pressure, heavy, immense. It settled over the court like a hand closing into a fist. I felt it in my lungs, in my bones, in the sudden stillness of every immortal body around me. The obsidian throne shifted. Someone near the back whispered, barely breathing, "The king." I froze mid-step. I felt him before I saw him, the way you feel a storm before the first drop of rain. A presence so vast it bent the space around it, ancient, controlled, predatory. King Vaelor, ruler of the Night Court, a king spoken of in lowered voices and unfinished sentences. He rose. The sound of it, stone grinding softly against stone, silenced the hall completely. Laughter died. Whispers strangled themselves. Even Prince Caelum straightened, the careless tilt of his posture snapping into rigid attention. No one laughed now. My back was still to him. I could feel his gaze between my shoulder blades like heat. "Stop," he said. One word. Absolute. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I turned slowly. Every instinct screamed not to look, to lower my eyes, to disappear. I didn't. I lifted my gaze and met his. King Vaelor descended the steps with measured precision, each movement deliberate, unhurried. He moved like someone who had never needed to rush because nothing had ever escaped him. His eyes never left me, not once. They were dark, so dark they swallowed the witchlight, but sharp with intelligence, memory, and something else I couldn't name. Hunger, perhaps, or recognition. When he reached me, he stopped close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from him. Not unpleasant, just inevitable, like standing too close to winter. He lifted my chin with 2 fingers. The touch was intimate, commanding, not a request. My breath caught as his fingers forced my face upward. Up close, he was overwhelming. Power pressed against my skin, into my bones. I had the irrational, terrifying certainty that if he wished it, I would simply come apart where I stood. The court leaned forward as one. "This one," he said quietly, his voice low and even, "was never meant for you." The words weren't for me. They were for the prince, for the court, for history itself. Prince Caelum tried to speak. "Your Majesty." The king didn't look at him. He leaned in. I barely had time to register the movement before pain exploded at my neck. Sharp, sudden, blinding. My breath tore free in a sound I didn't recognize as my own. A gasp, a cry. The world tilted. His teeth pierced my skin, and something else followed. Not draining, not consuming, but claiming. A force older than language reached out from him and wrapped around me, sinking deep, binding. The mark burned, not like fire, like inevitability. Blood bloomed hot against my throat. The scent filled the air, rich and intoxicating, and I felt the court react as one, every vampire sensing it, understanding it. This was not indulgence, not desire, not a mistake. The mark was instant, permanent, irrefutable. I swayed and his hand came to my back, steadying me without ceremony. Around us the court erupted, not in sound but in reaction. Eyes widened, bodies bowed without realizing they were doing it. Fear rippled outward, edged with something darker, curiosity, awe, forbidden hunger. Ancient laws screamed in silence. Prince Caelum staggered back, his face drained of colour. The king straightened slowly, his mouth stained crimson. Then he turned his gaze over the court. "She is mine now," he said. His voice was calm, final. The words fell like a blade through centuries of tradition. And in that moment, marked and shaking in his grasp, I understood one terrifying truth. I was no longer invisible, and nothing in the night court would ever be the same again. I don't remember falling. That is the first thing I realize when memory returns in fragments, sharp, disconnected impressions rather than a clean line of events. I remember sound before sensation, gasps tearing through the silence, the scrape of chairs pulled back too quickly, the sudden instinctive bowing of bodies that had been laughing at me moments earlier. I remember the smell, blood, mine, thick in the air, copper and heat, and something darker beneath it, something that didn't belong to me at all. The king's hand was at my back, firm, unyielding, holding me upright when my legs no longer remembered how. The mark burned, not like pain, like ownership. It pulsed at my neck, a living thing spreading outward in slow, deliberate waves. With every pulse, something inside me tightened, reshaped, aligned itself around a truth I hadn't chosen and could not undo. I was still standing in the center of the great hall, but I was no longer the same person who had tried to walk away. The court stared, not with laughter now, not with indulgent cruelty, with fear, with awe, with the unmistakable awareness that something irreversible had just happened in front of witnesses who would carry it for eternity. The night court had seen claims before. I knew that much even through the haze. Stories whispered among servants, warnings passed between mortals like talismans, but never like this. Never without ritual, never without consent, never without warning, and never, never by a king who had ruled alone for centuries. I heard Prince Caelum's breath hitch before I saw him move. He stood rigid, his pale eyes fixed on me, on the blood at my throat, on the unmistakable mark that had just rendered him irrelevant. "You cannot," he began. The words barely made it past his lips. "Leave," the king said. Vaelor didn't raise his voice, didn't look at him. He didn't need to. The command hit the room like a blade driven cleanly into stone. For half a heartbeat, I thought the prince might protest, might invoke law, tradition, outrage. He had been so confident moments ago, so secure in his cruelty. Instead, his mouth closed, his jaw tightened. And he left. No challenge, no argument, no dignity. The court shifted uneasily. Whispers tried to form and died unspoken. Ancient laws older than most of the beings standing here, creaked and fractured under the weight of what they had just witnessed. Then the king moved. His hand slid from my back to my wrist, fingers closing with deliberate pressure. Not gentle, not cruel, certain. "Come," he said quietly. I didn't resist. I don't know if I could have. The guards appeared as if summoned from the stone itself, royal black and steel, faces blank, eyes alert. They flanked us as we moved through the hall, a protective formation that left no room for doubt. I was not being hidden. I was being displayed. Every corridor we passed through was lined with watching eyes. Nobles who had not been present in the hall stepped aside hastily, bowing low, some too late, some too deep. Servants froze mid-motion, hands pressed to chests, heads lowered in instinctive submission. Whispers followed us like smoke. The king claimed her. A mortal, without ritual, without consent. My legs trembled with each step, but Vaelor never slowed. His grip on my wrist never loosened. The mark at my throat pulsed again, sharper this time, and I sucked in a breath that felt too thin. By the time we reached the royal wing, my vision was narrowing at the edges. The doors opened without announcement. The space beyond was vast and shadowed, lit by low-burning firelight and tall windows that looked out over the city. Cold air drifted in from somewhere unseen, carrying the scent of stone and rain. The doors closed behind us. The guards remained outside. Only then did Vaelor release me. The sudden absence of his touch made me sway. I caught myself on the edge of a table, fingers digging into polished wood. My pulse thundered in my ears, loud enough to drown out thought. I was alone with him, the king of the night court, the man who had bitten me in front of the world. I became acutely aware of my body, of the blood drying at my throat, of the strange heat curling low in my spine, answering the slow throb of the mark, of how exposed I felt without the court's gaze, without witnesses. Vaelor watched me in silence, not predatory, assessing, as if measuring damage. "You should sit," he said at last. I laughed. The sound startled even me, sharp, brittle, wrong. "Should I?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my effort. "Or should I kneel? Is that what comes next?" His gaze snapped to mine, something dark flickered there. Not anger, regret. "No," he said. "You should sit, because you're about to collapse." As if summoned by the words, my legs buckled. I sank into the nearest chair, breath coming shallow and uneven. The room felt too large, too quiet, every sound magnified. The mark burned again. This time I gasped outright, fingers flying to my neck. "What did you do to me?" I demanded. The words were louder than I intended, desperate, raw. Vaelor stepped closer, then stopped. He did not touch me again. "I claimed you," he said simply. "You branded me," I shot back, "in front of your entire court." "Yes." The calm certainty of it sent a chill through me. "You didn't ask," I said. "You didn't warn me. You didn't—" "I didn't," he agreed. The admission knocked the air from my lungs. For a moment, I had no words. Anger tangled with fear, confusion with something darker I didn't want to name. The mark pulsed again, responding to my emotional spike, and I hissed through my teeth. "What does it mean?" I asked finally, quieter now. "What happens to me?" Vaelor studied me, his expression unreadable. "It means," he said slowly, "that no one in this kingdom may harm you without answering to me. That's not an answer. It is the only one that matters tonight." I pushed myself to my feet despite the dizziness. "You've turned me into a target." "Yes." The honesty was brutal. "They will come for me," I said. "Your enemies, your nobles, anyone who wants to hurt you." "Yes." My laugh this time was hollow. "So that's it? I survive because you say I do?" "For now," he said. The mark flared, sharp enough to steal my breath. I clutched the edge of the table, vision swimming. "For now?" I whispered. Vaelor's gaze softened, just slightly. "You were already a target," he said quietly. You simply didn't know it." Silence stretched between us. Outside, the palace breathed. Guards shifted. Somewhere far below, the city moved on, unaware that its future had just been altered by blood on marble. By morning, the kingdom would be burning with questions. Who was she? Why her? What had the king done? And by nightfall, someone would test the claim. I felt it as surely as the pulse at my throat. Blood had been spilled in public, and blood would answer it. I woke in silence that did not belong to me. It took a moment to understand why the quiet felt wrong, too deep, too complete, as if the world had been muffled. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling above me was unfamiliar, dark stone veined with silver, high enough that shadows gathered in the corners like something alive. I did not move. I listened. The room breathed around me. Fire murmured somewhere to my left. Beyond that, a low hum. Not sound exactly, but pressure. Wards. I didn't know how I knew that, I just did. Then the mark burned. Not sharply, not painfully, like a slow pulse reminding me that what I remembered was real. I lifted my hand to my throat. The skin there was warm, tender. When my fingers brushed the place where his teeth had broken skin, a jolt went through me, down my spine, into my chest, curling tight and unfamiliar. I gasped. Memory crashed back in fragments. Laughter, marble, blood, his voice. She is mine now. I sat up too quickly and the room tilted. Silk slid against my skin. Fine, expensive, utterly wrong. I grabbed the edge of the bed until the dizziness passed, breathing through it, grounding myself in sensation. This was real. I was not dreaming. I was in the king's chambers, in his bed. Claimed. The words settled in my mind like something poisonous. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood. The floor was cold beneath my bare feet, anchoring me. I took a step, then another, testing myself. My body felt different. Not weaker, not stronger, aware, as if something inside me had been tuned to a new frequency. I crossed the room slowly, taking it in despite myself. Tall windows draped in black velvet, a hearth carved with sigils I didn't recognize, furniture that looked more like sculpture than comfort. Everything here spoke of permanence, of power unchallenged. This was where he ruled from, and I was inside it. A mirror stood near the far wall. I hesitated, then forced myself to look. The woman staring back at me was pale, eyes too bright against skin gone bloodless. Dark hair spilled loose around my shoulders. And at my throat, the mark. It was unmistakable. 2 small punctures already healing, surrounded by faintly darkened skin. It did not look like a wound. It looked intentional, as if my body had accepted it without argument, as if it belonged there. A knock sounded at the door. I spun. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a wild moment, I thought it was him, that he had come to finish whatever this was. Instead, the door opened just enough for a woman to slip inside. She bowed low when she saw me standing. "My lady," she said quietly. The title hit harder than any insult had. I didn't call for anyone," I said. "I was instructed to attend when you woke," she replied, eyes downcast. "Food has been prepared. And a physician, if you wish." I almost laughed. A physician for a king's bite. "I'm not injured," I said. "Just awake." She hesitated. "The mark isn't bleeding," I finished. "I know." Her gaze flicked up despite herself, curiosity warring with fear. She bowed again and retreated, leaving the door open just enough to remind me I was not alone, or free. I paced, not because I was restless, but because standing still made it worse. The mark pulsed again, slower this time, and I pressed my palm to my throat as if I could hold myself together. I tried to understand what he had done. Not emotionally, practically. He had claimed me in front of the court, which meant I was no longer invisible. It meant every noble who had laughed at me yesterday now knew my name, or would soon. It meant servants would whisper. Guards would watch me differently. Enemies would see me not as insignificant, but as leverage. It meant I was no longer just Elira. I was his. The thought made my stomach twist. I heard footsteps outside the chamber, slower, heavier, purposeful. My body reacted before my mind did, heart racing, breath going shallow, every nerve alert. The door opened fully. He stood there, King Vaelor, without crown, without armor, dressed in dark, simple garments that somehow made him more imposing, not less. His gaze found me immediately sharp and assessing, as if confirming I was still intact. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched. I broke first. "You marked me," I said. "Yes." No apology. No hesitation. "You did it without asking." "Yes." My hands clenched at my sides. "Do you know what that means for me?" "I do." "Then explain it," I snapped. "Because right now all I understand is that I was humiliated in public, then branded like property." Something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt. Recognition. "I stopped them," he said. "You replaced them," I shot back. The words hung between us, sharp and dangerous. He took a step closer. I did not retreat, though every instinct screamed at me to put distance between us. "They would have destroyed you," he said. "They already tried," I replied. "You just chose a different way to do it." The mark flared suddenly, hot enough to steal my breath. I gasped, fingers flying to my throat, panic spiking. What is that?" I demanded. His gaze dropped to the mark. "The bond responding," he said quietly. "Strong emotion can trigger it." "So every time I'm angry," I said through clenched teeth, "you'll feel it?" "Yes." "And every time you are?" I asked. A pause. "Yes." That frightened me more than anything else he had said. "You've tied me to you," I whispered. "Without my consent, without my understanding. You've made my survival dependent on your enemy's restraint." "No," he said. "I've made their restraint dependent on my wrath." "That's not better." He studied me for a long moment. "You are not afraid of me," he observed. "I am," I said. "I'm just more afraid of what this makes me." The truth settled in my chest, heavy and undeniable. I had wanted to be seen. I had wanted dignity. I had wanted choice. Instead, I had become a symbol, a provocation, a weakness. And the most terrifying part, somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the anger, beneath the mark's relentless pulse, I felt the court watching, waiting. I understood then what it meant to be claimed by a king. It was not protection. It was attention. And attention, in this palace, was lethal. "I won't be quiet," I said suddenly. He tilted his head slightly. "I did not expect you to be. I won't disappear to make this easier for you." "Good. I won't be your secret." His gaze sharpened. "You are not." The words echoed strangely in the room. Not a promise. A declaration. I met his eyes and for the first time since waking, did not feel like prey. "If you've dragged me into your war," I said, voice steady despite the fear thrumming through me, "then I will not stand behind you." Silence. Then softly, "I would expect nothing less." I didn't know then whether that was approval or warning, but I knew one thing with terrible clarity. The king's obsession was not something that would save me. It was something I would have to survive. I woke to a kingdom divided. I learned that before I ever left the king's wing, before I heard the whispers with my own ears or saw the way eyes lingered too long when they thought I wasn't looking, I learned it in the way the palace breathed differently now, tense and alert, like a body waiting for impact. Some called me a whore. Others called me a queen in waiting. Both were wrong. The servants were the first to test me. They always were. Their loyalty shifted like sand, responding to power long before command. Some bowed deeper than necessary, eyes lowered in exaggerated reverence. Others avoided my gaze entirely, their silence thick with judgment. Food trays arrived untouched, as if poisoned by rumor. Dresses were laid out without comment, fine fabrics meant to clothe me in legitimacy I had not asked for. I wore none of them. I stayed in black. Not mourning, warning. The guards changed too. They were no longer decoration. They stood closer now, hands never far from steel, eyes tracking movement even in familiar corridors. I heard the quiet exchanges between them, coded phrases, half words, the language of people expecting violence. Because violence was coming, the courtiers were subtler. They smiled, they offered sympathy, advice, concern disguised as loyalty. They watched my reactions closely, waiting to see if I would cry, rage, beg, or retreat. I did none of those things. I learned to speak carefully, to answer without revealing, to let silence stretch until others filled it with their own mistakes. And Vaelor? Vaelor tested himself. I saw it in the way he moved through council chambers, his presence colder, sharper. In the way his gaze flicked to me whenever voices rose too high, whenever tradition was invoked too loudly. Claiming me publicly had done something worse than scandal. It had made him vulnerable. Enemies would not strike him. They would strike me. I understood that now with terrible clarity. The first attempt came on the 5th night. I was returning to my chambers after a council dinner I had not been invited to attend but was expected to be seen leaving. Visibility was a performance now, timed, calculated. The corridor was narrow, lined with carved stone figures whose eyes followed you if you let them. 2 guards flanked me, alert but relaxed enough to be believable. That was the mistake. The blade came from the shadows between statues, silent, precise, aimed for my throat. I didn't scream. I reacted. I don't know how I knew. I only know the mark flared white-hot an instant before steel flashed into the torchlight. I twisted, stumbled back, and the blade grazed my shoulder instead of my neck. Blood sprayed across marble. The guards shouted. Steel rang. One lunged forward, intercepting the attacker while the other dragged me back. I fell, hard. The world narrowed to sound and pain and the smell of blood, mine and someone else's. I saw the assassin's face briefly before a sword cut him down. He was young, desperate, mortal. Silence slammed down afterward. My ears rang, my shoulder burned. I pressed my hand to the wound and stared at the red pooling between my fingers. So, this was how it began. Vaelor arrived seconds later. Not running, never running. His presence hit the corridor like a storm front, guards snapping to attention, servants flattening themselves against the walls. His gaze locked onto me immediately, and the bond surged violently in response. I hissed in pain as the mark flared. He was furious, not wild, controlled, deadly. He knelt in front of me, hands hovering, not touching. "Are you injured?" "Yes," I said, "but I'm alive." His jaw tightened. He turned his gaze to the corpse. "Who sent you?" he demanded. The dead did not answer. "They won't stop," I said quietly. He looked back at me sharply. "They will," he said. "I will make an example." "No," I interrupted. The word surprised us both. He stilled. I pushed myself up despite the guard's protests. My shoulder screamed, but I ignored it. "They want a reaction," I said. "Fear, isolation, you retreating with me into shadows so they can control the narrative." His eyes narrowed. "They want to see you bleed through me." Silence. I felt the court listening even though they weren't present. Felt the tension coiled tight around us. "So what do you suggest?" he asked. I met his gaze steadily. "You don't hide me," I said. "You elevate me." The words felt dangerous even as I spoke them. "You make it clear that harming me destabilizes the kingdom," I continued, "that touching me invites consequences they cannot afford." His gaze searched my face, not for weakness, but calculation. "You would put yourself closer to the blade," he said. "I already am," I replied. "The difference is whether I stand still or force them to hesitate." The mark pulsed, slower now. Approval or warning? "You are not expendable," he said quietly. "No," I agreed. "I am leverage." The truth settled between us like a pact neither of us had expected to make. That night, word spread fast. The assassin was named, his family detained, his patron questioned. The message was clear. The king was not blind, and neither was his companion. But I understood something deeper as I lay awake afterward, pain pulsing through my shoulder, the bond humming restlessly beneath my skin. Being chosen was not safety. It was exposure. It meant every breath I took was now a statement. Every step was watched, every silence interpreted. And if I wanted to survive, I could not be passive. I began attending councils, not seated, not silent, standing at the edges listening, learning names, tracking alliances, not speaking until spoken to, and then speaking precisely. They watched me carefully, waiting for me to slip. I did not. I learned who feared change more than scandal, who hated Vaelor enough to risk me, who flinched when I met their gaze. I learned the price of being seen, and I paid it in blood. But I also learned something else, something dangerous. The court did not fear Vaelor alone. They feared what he would become if I died. That fear was power, and I intended to use it, because this was no longer about survival. It was about making sure the next blade never came close enough to draw blood. Being chosen was not safety, it was war, and I was done pretending I hadn't been drafted. The blood assembly was called at dawn. That alone told me everything. No one convened the old lords in haste unless the kingdom itself was at risk. The assembly was not a council. It was not advisory. It was judgment, ancient, absolute, and designed to remind the throne that it did not exist in isolation. It existed by consent. I stood in my chambers as the servants dressed me, hands steady despite the weight pressing down on my lungs. Outside the tall windows, the city lay quiet under a pale, colourless sky, as if the world itself were holding its breath. They dressed me in crimson, not the soft red of silk meant to flatter, but the deep, dark red reserved for blood rites and executions. The colour of accusation, of challenge. At my throat, the mark was no longer subtle. It pulsed visibly now, a faint dark glow beneath the skin, responding to the tension coiling tighter with every passing moment. I touched it once, not in fear, in acknowledgement. The doors opened. Vaelor waited in the corridor, already armoured, not for battle but for ceremony. Black steel etched with sigils of authority. No crown. He did not wear it when the throne itself was on trial. "You don't have to stand beside me," he said quietly. "I do," I replied. He studied me for a long moment, then inclined his head. We walked together. The assembly hall dwarfed even the great court, circular, carved from obsidian and bone-white stone, with 7 elevated seats arrayed in a ring above the floor. Each seat marked the territory of an old bloodline, lords who had ruled when the world was younger and mercy a novelty. They were already there: Duke Varesh, Lady Isolde, Lord Merrick, the others whose names had been whispered like warnings, their gazes cut into me as we entered. Some held disgust, some curiosity, some calculation. None held mercy. I stood one step below Vaelor's position, exactly where protocol dictated a consort should not stand. The herald's voice rang out. Let the blood assembly convene. Let grievance be spoken. Let judgment be weighed. Duke Varesh rose first, tall, ancient. His eyes were pale with age and sharpened by contempt. "This assembly is called to address a violation," he said, voice echoing. "A mortal woman claimed without consent, without right, without approval, by the king himself." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "She is a destabilizing presence," Varesh continued. "An insult to tradition, a liability that invites rebellion. We demand restitution." Lady Isolde leaned forward. "Release her," Lord Merrick sneered. "Or kill her." Silence followed. I felt the words like a physical blow, but I did not look away. I met their gazes one by one, memorizing faces. If this was the end, I would know who had called for it. Vaelor said nothing. He listened. That frightened them more than any threat. "You have broken the old laws," Varesh pressed. "The king may not bind himself to mortal weakness. You know this. You swore to uphold it." Vaelor's voice was calm when he spoke. "I swore to protect the realm. And this is protection?" Isolde gestured sharply toward me. "She has already drawn blood." "I did not draw the blade," I said. The sound of my voice echoed through the chamber, cutting cleanly through centuries of expectation. Several lords stiffened. Vaelor did not stop me. "I was attacked," I continued, steady now, "because your fear made me visible, and your silence made me vulnerable." Varesh's lip curled. "You speak out of turn." "No," Vaelor said coldly. "She speaks under my protection." The words landed heavily. "This assembly is not concerned with her grievances," Merrick snapped. "It concerns the stability of the crown." "Then speak plainly," I said. "You fear what happens if I remain." They did not deny it. Varesh folded his hands. "If you remain, others will challenge you through her. Wars will be fought indirectly. Bloodlines will fracture. You are a weakness." The word struck hard, not because it was new, because it was familiar. Vaelor turned slightly toward me. This was the moment. I felt it in my bones. I stepped forward. The guards shifted instinctively, then froze when Vaelor lifted a single hand. "I will not be hidden," I said. You will be dead, Merrick replied flatly. Only if you succeed, I answered. A few of them laughed. I let them. You fear me because I am uncontained, I continued, because I do not fit your rules, because I expose the lie that your order protects anyone but itself. Enough, Varesh snapped. King, you will answer. Vaelor turned to face the ring. Yes, he said. The word was soft, deadly. I will answer. He reached out, not for his sword, for me. His hand closed around mine, not possessive, not reassuring, declarative. I will not release her, he said, and I will not pretend the old laws serve us anymore. Shock rippled through the chamber. You dare, Varesh began. I do, Vaelor interrupted, because this assembly has forgotten its purpose. The laws forbidding mortal bonds were written after a king acted in secrecy, in obsession, and destroyed a woman who never chose what was done to her. The chamber stilled. I will not repeat that sin, Vaelor continued, nor will I sacrifice this one to preserve your comfort. I felt the weight of his words settle around me, not protection, position. I claimed her publicly, he said, and I will finish what I began. He turned to me. The moment stretched. Elira, he said, voice carrying through the hall. Kneel. Gasps broke the silence. I did not hesitate. I lowered myself onto the obsidian floor, the cold seeping through the fabric of my gown, grounding me. Vaelor drew a blade, not a weapon but an ancient, ceremonial knife, its edge dark with old magic. This assembly forbids coronation of mortals, Varesh said hoarsely. I am not crowning a queen, Vaelor replied. He pressed the blade to his palm. Blood welled. He let it fall. 3 drops. Onto my brow. The mark at my throat flared violently, fire and ice crashing through me at once. I bit back a cry as something fundamental shifted, aligned, locked into place. I crown an equal, Vaelor declared. The chamber erupted. No, this is treason. You will tear the realm apart. Vaelor placed his hand on my shoulder. Stand, he said. I did. I rose with his blood still warm on my skin. I bind my authority to hers, Vaelor continued. Not as consort, not as ornament, as partner. Her life is bound to the stability of this throne. Varesh surged to his feet. Then she dies now. The dagger flew. I saw it. Time slowed. Vaelor moved. So did I. I don't know which of us reacted first, only that steel never reached me. Vaelor caught the blade mid-air, his hand closing around it as if it were nothing more than an inconvenience. Blood streamed down his fingers. Silence crashed down. You have made your choice, he said quietly. He turned the blade in his grip and drove it, not into Varesh, but into the stone at his feet. The floor cracked. Power surged outward, rattling the hall, extinguishing torches, bending knees. Any who raise steel against her, Vaelor said, voice echoing with something older than the throne, will answer with their bloodlines. Varesh collapsed back into his seat, face grey. No one else moved. The assembly understood. This was no longer negotiation. Vaelor looked down at me. The mark burned steadily now. Not pain, not fire. Clarity. I understood what I had become. Not safe, not untouchable, but decisive. The herald's voice trembled as he spoke. Let it be recorded, he said, by blood and witness. The king has bound his reign to another. We walked out together, not alone, not bowed. The court parted before us like water before a blade. I felt their eyes on me, fearful, furious, calculating. Good. Let them look. I had paid the price of being seen. Now they would pay the price of underestimating me. Outside, the sky had finally broken into colour, deep red bleeding into gold at the horizon. Vaelor released my hand. For the first time since the claiming, I did not feel smaller without his touch. You chose war, he said quietly. I chose honesty, I replied. A pause. Then, faintly, the world will change. Yes, I said, it will. I touched the mark at my throat one last time, not as a wound, not as a brand, as a promise. I had been rejected, I had been claimed. Now, I was crowned in blood, and the world would adapt, or it would burn. And the choice came too soon. If your fate was decided by someone who loved you, would you call it salvation or betrayal? Like, comment, and subscribe for the next gem.